Imagine, if you will, that this little hill is a mountain stretching out thousands and thousands of feet through process of erosion and through a process of millions of years. This huge mountain has been eroded to almost nothing. Imagine too, if you will, that millions of years ago, as this huge mountain was being eroded, within it, all kinds of different metals were being washed down the mountain. After you get all these different types of metals together in a big pile like this volcano just came up from underneath. Just a lava, just a heat. Imagine that, if you will, millions of years ago. And all this tremendous heat underneath the ground started melting all these different types of metals together. So imagine, if you will, that after all this metal was done being melted and solidified again, imagine, if you will, that this huge block of metal, after millions of years, started to break up into smaller pieces. And imagine, if you will, that after a few million years more, after erosion between the water and the wind and dust blowing on the metal and rust acting up on the metal, that this metal started to, at least one of the pieces that broke off, started to take shape. And imagine, if you will, that after millions of years passed, that piece of metal, rusted on the outside, began to take the shape of something that maybe nature could use for a purpose. Imagine, if you will, that after a few million years more passed, that something in a shape of a cylinder, without the green paint yet, came into existence. And imagine, if you will, that over a period of millions of years more, the inside of it was hollowed out. Imagine, if you will, if as one of the volcanoes around this area where this piece of metal is sitting, that one of the volcanoes erupts and some of its magma, a piece of molten metal, erupts into the sky miles high. And as it starts to fall down to the earth, it begins to solidify. And it just happens to hit the top of this container. It hits it in such a way that it's the perfect size. It fits in here perfectly. Then, after a few millions of years more, this little piece of metal that fell on top of this container created, through erosion, through time, a little hole in here with a valve, so that whatever is inside of it would not escape. Imagine, if you will, that a few more millions of years pass and this container develops a strange thing around here. We now today call that a thread. But that's what happened after millions of years. Also, independently of this container coming into existence, imagine, if you will, that there was a pool nearby where all these different chemicals ran into. And all these different chemicals got combined together. And then there was some kind of a spark, something that mixed them together and created a special color, green. And imagine, if you will, that a few thousand years more and this earthquake happened. And this cylinder that was just sitting slightly above where this pool of chemicals was located. Imagine, if you will, that this cylinder rolled down the hill and fell into the batch of green stuff. And at the same time that this container fell in there, another earthquake happened, and all the liquid that was in there, all the chemicals, all this green stuff was emptied out. And the only thing that was left in there, hanging by this end and that end, was this container. Imagine, if you will, that after a few thousand years more, this now green container develops another valve there. So imagine, if you will, that this container is lying or sitting somewhere, and independently of this container being created, independently of this paint being created, independently of this label that just happened to be created by chance over millions of years, with all these different colors and all these different writings on it, created independently of all that. Imagine, if you will, that just below where this container is sitting, a whole bunch of different chemicals came together. These chemicals were just perfect. They were a mix of many different chemicals, but they were the perfect quantity of each chemical. Not a little less, not a little more. They were just perfect. And imagine if another small earthquake happened and this container rolled into that pool of this special liquid gas. And this container got filled with that special gas. And imagine, if you will, that after this container got filled, this little thing just happened to fall right on top of it. Imagine, if you will, that independently of the container, independently of the paint, independently of the gas that fell into the container, imagine, if you will, that this device also happened by chance. Imagine, if you will, that this metal tube is hollow and allows gas to flow through it. And imagine, if you will, that by chance this connector that connects into something else also happened by chance. Imagine also, if you will, that something like this also, over a period of millions and millions of years, independently of this and independently of this, came into existence. Some of the same processes, like the paint on this bottle, also came into existence into the paint on this device here. But it happened completely by chance and separately from the paint on this one. Yet, almost matches. Millions of years and trial and error were able to create a device that, when you put it together with this, and you put it together with this, and amazingly enough, this being created by chance, separate from this, over a period of millions of years, is able to connect in here. Even has a little thing that goes into this one, and it has an opposite thread that fits perfectly into this thread. It's amazing how this little device, created by nature, independent of this one, fits in here perfectly. And this end, also created by chance, amazingly enough, fits in this hole here. If a spark is created, a flame is created at the same time that you turn the dial. This, of course, all happened over a period of millions of years. You have to think that this didn't happen overnight, right? The metals that created these devices had to be created deep in the earth, or they had to be brought to the earth from outer space somewhere, and they were accumulated on our planet. And over millions of years, they got fused in a crust, and then the crust came up into a mountain. The mountain was eroded. The metals came together. They mixed in the right proportions. They were melted by a volcano that just happened to have its lava flow right underneath this pile of metal debris, if we could say that. And it melted all these metals in the right proportions. And everything just happened just the right way, where all these different things not related to each other just evolved by chance, and millions of years, little by little, step by step. Of course, you are probably not buying that. I don't know who in their right mind would find something like this out in nature somewhere, or on another planet. And I don't know who would see something like this and would not be able to see that something like this needed a designer, a creator, to make something like this. This could not possibly exist by itself. This could not possibly be created by nature. Nature could not create all these different devices, all these different things that are needed for this to work properly. Yet, we are made to believe by the leading scientists of today, we are made to believe that the whole universe just, poof, happened by chance. From a little singularity, it just, from nothing, basically, violating the laws of physics. Yet they say that, well, there was nothing in the beginning, and poof, Big Bang happened, and out of nothing, everything that we see happened. Of course, some scientists say, well, maybe there was a little something in there. There was something in the nothing, and then it just poof, and it expanded into the universe. But they say that the universe has a beginning, right? For many centuries, scientists said, no, the universe is static. The universe always existed. But that sounded too much like God. You know, that the universe always, no, we can't do that. So somebody came up with the idea, actually the Big Bang theory. The Big Bang was like mocking the person that came out with that idea, but that Big Bang name stuck. So now they started saying, you know, oh, it's the universe exploded from a little singularity, from a little nothing, and exploded, and all the mass that we see in the universe came out of that little nothing, smaller than the head of a pin, an invisible, a singular, a microscopic singularity, all the mass in the universe, and it just exploded. And we can see that because we can see that the stars and the galaxies are floating away from us. They're showing us a red shift. In other words, when a star or a galaxy is floating, is going away from us, the light coming towards us turns into the red spectrum. If it's coming towards us, I believe it's a bluish spectrum. So because of that red, all the galaxies are floating away from us. So at some point, if we reverse the process, they had to start from something. But now, that sounds too much like the Bible, because the Bible says, and the Bible is the only book from a faith-based religion, even though Christianity is not a religion. I've touched on this before. But the Bible is the only book that says, in the beginning, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it's the only book that says that. that there's a God that created in the beginning. And this Big Bang thing to scientists is beginning to sound too much now, like a creation event. Like, you know, where was all that stuff before it was created? So it had to come from something. But anyway, the universe is so fine-tuned that for the universe to grow the way it grew, all the particles, everything from helium to lead to all the elements that composed our universe had to be in a perfect amount, in a perfect quantities for it to grow the way it did. And that comes not from people that believe in God, but from atheists. If you read their books, and I'm not going to quote them, I used to have their books. I had tons of books from atheists because I like to read them. I like to see what they were saying. I gave all those books away. You can do a search on Google. You can search people like Richard Dawkins and people like that, very profound atheists, Darwinists, that they will tell you that the universe is so fine-tuned. Everything looks so perfect, all perfectly made for life to exist on this planet. But, of course, it all happened by chance. You know, they always come back at the end, oh, but it all happened by chance. There's no God involved here. But they say it, they do say it, that everything looks like it was perfectly fine-tuned. Somebody has said, I can't remember who said it, maybe you can do a search on Google, but I've heard say that you have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of different dials, okay? And these dials are all set, and they're all set in the right way for the universe and for life to exist on this planet. And if you go in there and you tweak one dial, and you just tweak it a little bit, 1,000th%, life could not exist. From the cosmos, from the universe, from the biggest thing that there is, the whole universe, to the smallest thing, everything is so fine-tuned, made precisely for life to exist on this planet. Yet we are led to believe that this and this and this could exist in nature, be created by pure chance, and not have a creator behind it. How much more complex is our bodies compared to this? Thousands, millions of times more complex. Yet they say that our bodies could be created by chance over millions of years, purely by evolution. Blind processes, pure chance, survival of the fittest. But this, they might say, no chance. No way that all these different parts could happen in nature by itself, by pure blind processes, and just happen to fit and work together for a purpose. Yet, here we are, perfectly made, perfectly designed, from our cells, from our DNA that replicates itself in each cell. Each DNA, the DNA code that it's so big would fill 2,500 books, 400 pages thick. And it has to be in sequence for it to work. You move some things around and it doesn't work. That, people believe it's by chance. This, they say, no way it happened by chance. What's more complex, us or this? Shout joyfully to God, all the earth. Sing glory to his name. Make his praise glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your works! Because of the greatness of your power, your enemies will give feigned obedience to you. Psalm 66, 1-3.